remember when I was in high school, we had certain things. We had a very close-knit group of individuals, and we had a coach that I think he was just a big kid anyway, and he loved to joke around with us, and we just had a real good friendships during that time. And there was a phrase that we sometimes would say to one another. We found ways to very gently, if you will, rebuke each other, to encourage each other. And we could be very open and very frank with each other about things at times. And one of the phrases that we used to describe that was the phrase, we would say sometimes to a person, "You have a don't care attitude." A don't care attitude. And that wasn't good. We were telling people, you need to care. Don't ever let yourself get into this place where you don't care about something. Now I'm going to kind of go back on something I said in the last message, because I've entitled this lesson, "The Opposite of Change is Stagnation." Now I know that last time that I said that there probably is nothing, there is probably no stagnation in this world. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. But I want you to hear me out today, because I think there is a sense in which we do stagnate in an attitude. Now, that attitude of stagnation will lead us backwards. It will lead us to regress. So even though I question the use of that term, I wanted to kind of kick it off with that term today. And so my point is that when we stagnate, we regress, we stop growing, we head in the negative direction, even towards wickedness. Complacency is not a biblical value. Complacency is not something that God values or Jesus values in our life, but we can become complacent. The dictionary definition of complacency is a feeling of quiet pleasure or security, often while unaware of some potential danger, defect, or the like. Self-satisfaction or smug satisfaction with an existing situation or condition. It is kind of where we just get satisfied with the status quo. We get satisfied with the way things are. We just get a don't care attitude. We kind of throw up our hands and we say, well, I can't do anything about that. Not my problem. If the world wants to go to hell in a handbasket, then that's okay with me. I'll just mind my own business. And we just simply don't particularly care about what's going on. Now, I looked this up about how it manifests itself in the workplace. Now, I have a little different situation for me because, I do have folks I work with in the workplace, but they're members of our church. But I'm talking about when you're generally in your workplace, there are certain signs of whether or not someone is complacent. For instance, they disengage. It's easy to tell when an employee has signed out of work, not just physically, but also mentally. Their hearts aren't in the work anymore. Or when someone just simply stops thinking, they just simply don't think very deeply about what they're doing. They just do it routinely. Or someone who lacks initiative. They have no ambition in the work. Oh, they show up, they do their job, they check out, but there's no ambition to improve or to get better at what they do. They are just content with the same old all the time. Or some people who just simply don't invest in themselves. They don't invest in the skill or the talent that they need to do their job. They just simply are like, well, it's good enough. It's good enough. Or sometimes people opt for shortcuts. They just find the easiest way to do it, the course of least resistance. And they find a shortcut and they take the shortcut. They never take the long way around when it comes to doing their job. Or some people just simply play it safe. They don't want to risk anything. They won't want to put themselves out there. They're just playing it safe. And that basically people just lose their passion for the job. It could have been a job that they really wanted at one time. They worked hard to get that job, and then somewhere over time, they just lose their passion for it. That's complacency. Now, I want you to go over with me to the book of Amos in the Old Testament. Amos chapter 6, verses 1 through 7. Amos chapter 6, verses 1 through 7. And I'm going to read this. Excuse me, got to get my Bible down here. I'm going to read this in the New International Version. Let me find Amos here. And listen what it says here. Amos 6, verses 1 through 7. Woe to you who are complacent in Zion, and to you who feel secure in Mount Samaria. You notable men of the foremost nation, to whom the people of Israel come. Go to Calneh and look at it. Go from there to great Hamath, and then go down to Gath in Philistia. Are they better off than your two kingdoms? Is their land larger than yours? You put off the day of disaster and bring near a reign of terror. You lie on beds adorned with ivory and lounge on your couches. You dine on choice lambs and fatted calves. You strum away on your harps like David and improvise on musical instruments. You drink wine by the bowlful and use the finest lotions, but you do not grieve over the ruin of Joseph. Therefore you will be among the first to go into exile. Your feasting and lounging will end. You hear what Amos is saying to these people? He's saying, there's trouble in the land. There are things going on here that are just not right. He says, but you're just kind of complacent. You're like, well, who cares? Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. And you just go along and you pamper yourself. You take care of yourself. You make sure you've got everything you need and more, and you indulge in all the luxuries of life. And he simply says, look, you need to understand that there's something more going on here than just simply your pleasure and your comfort. The word complacent means to be at ease. At ease. Now there's a difference between contentment in our lives with God and being at ease with all the things that go on in the world. Isaiah chapter 32 verse 9 says, Rise up, you women who are at ease, and hear my voice. Give ear to my word. You complacent daughters. Tremble, you women who are at ease. Be troubled, you complacent daughters. Strip, undress, and put on sackcloth on your waist. It means here that they are no longer troubled by anything. They can see all of the suffering around them and they're just not troubled by it. They no longer mourn or disturbed by it. It's kind of a feeling of false security that they have. For instance, in Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 14, Jeremiah says, They dress the wound of my people as though it were not serious. Peace, peace, they say, when there is no peace. And in Jeremiah's day, Babylon was at the door, but no one wanted to hear about that. Amos tells his people, he says, go look at Calneh, go look at Hamath and Gath and Philistia, all of which have fallen by the sword. Does Israel think that she will fare any better? Does her pride say, it can't happen to me? Luxury and opulence and comfort and entertainment and pampering and best foods and laziness, while impending doom looms on the horizon. It's as old as, I don't want to hear what the doctor has to say about my cholesterol. I'm just going to live like a stroke can't happen to me. I'm not going to hear what the doctor says about my weight, because it might affect other people, but it's never going to affect me. I'm not going to listen to what anybody says about my diet. I'm not going to listen to what anybody says about exercise. I'm not going to listen to what anybody says about how I can improve my life, because I'm happy with me just the way I am. And if you don't like it, you just have to accept me just like I am. No change. Nothing going on in my life. Just simply complacent. Well, what of the modern church? While nearly 2/3 of Americans identify as Christians, only 17% of the people in this country attend a church. Christians are giving 2.5% of their income. During the Great Depression, Christians gave 3.3%, and today we're living in one of the most prosperous times ever, and only 2.5% of our income is given to the Lord. Only 3 to 5% of Americans who give to their local church do so through regular tithing. When surveyed, 17% of Americans state that they regularly tithe. Only 17% give 10% of their income back to God. For families making $75,000 or more, only 1% of them gave at least 10% in tithing. That's complacency. That is the kind of stagnation that the kingdom of God cannot endure. God designed His kingdom to be vibrant and alive, and to people to be sacrificial, and people to be moving forward in this business of the kingdom. But yet when we see this kind of complacency, it just simply should grieve our hearts. And if we're in that complacency, we should understand that we too are grieving God's heart. Now I want to present to you a different perspective. I don't want this to be a downer necessarily for you, but I do want to, because just the same way Amos did and Isaiah did and Jeremiah did, I want to somehow say to us, we've got to wake up. We've got to realize the times in which we live. I want to give you a different perspective. And that perspective is that we're on a journey with God. We're on a journey. We're heading somewhere with God. Do you believe that God is taking us individually and as a church somewhere? He is moving us in a direction that He has called us to join Him on mission, an adventure, a life-changing experience. I believe God has. I believe God is saying to each and every one of us, look, you want to have the adventure of your life, join me. I will take you places you cannot even imagine. We will do things that will blow your mind. We will be involved in eternal matters that will have everlasting consequences to them. Just join me on this journey, and I will make sure you will never be bored again, because living for me is the most important thing you can do. The invitation that Jesus offered to His first disciples was simple. Come, follow me. Those 3 words produced the book of Acts. The conversions, the church plantings, the survivals, the prayer meetings, the rescues, the mission trips, the fundraisers, the disciple making, the problem solving, the sacrifice, the relationship building, the martyrdom of thousands was produced by those 3 words, come, follow me. That's why the book of Acts is one of the most exciting books in the Bible, because it is about Acts. It's about the way in which people were invigorated to work for God. This reminds me of a song that Stephen Curtis Chapman introduced many, many years ago called The Great Adventure. I want to read you the words to that song. And if you can hear it in your ear, it's even better. I'm not going to sing it for you. Started out this morning in the usual way, he says, chasing thoughts inside my head of all I had to do today. Another time around the circle, try to make it better than the last. I opened up my Bible and I read about you and me. Said we'd been prisoners and God's grace have set us free. And somewhere between the pages, it hit me like a lightning bolt. I saw a big frontier in front of me, and I heard someone say, let's go. Saddle up your horses. We've got a trail to blaze. Through the wild blue yonder of God's amazing grace, let's follow our leader into the glorious unknown. This is a life like no other. Whoa, whoa, this is the great adventure. I can just hear that song in my head. And then he continues, he says, so come on, get ready for the ride of your life. Going to leave long-faced religion and a cloud of dust behind and discover all the new horizons waiting to be explored. This is what we were created for. Saddle up your horses. We've got a trail to blaze. Through the wild blue yonder of God's amazing grace, let's follow our leader into the glorious unknown. This is the life of no other, like no other. Whoa, whoa, this is a great adventure. We'll travel along over mountains so high. We'll go through valleys so low. Still though it all, we'll find that this is the greatest journey that the human heart will ever see. The love of God will take us far beyond our wildest dreams. And then he ends with that chorus again. Saddle up your horses. We've got a trail to blaze. Through the wild blue yonder of God's amazing grace, let us follow our leader into the great unknown. This is a life like no other. Whoa, whoa, this is the great adventure. I love that song because it really captures the heart of what God is trying to do through us individuals and through his church. But in order to do that, we must change. We must come out of our complacency. We must come out of our stagnation. We must come and get on the starting line and rev up our engines and be ready to go into the great adventure with God. My challenge to you is to turn up the volume on the cries of the hurting and the lonely and the lost and the needy and the suffering and the unchurched and the newcomers and the leaders who need your support and partnership. Turn up the volume on the unborn and the widows and the orphans and the homeless and the children and all who are dying to be served by Jesus through you. Don't waste another minute in your complacency and stagnation. Get ready for a great adventure. Now I have 3 questions for you, and I want to give those questions to you. Here's the 3 questions, and you're going to be challenged to answer these questions in different kinds of ways. But I want you to hear them here first. If you suffer from spiritual complacency, what is the source of your complacency? Where is that complacency coming from? You see, the spiritual life is exciting. How did you get to a place of complacency if you're in that place? Secondly, how can one nurture a consistent focus on what is most important? How can you get into a consistency? Now I want you to think about this in terms of consistency of your church attendance, of your Bible study, consistency in taking care of your family, consistency of prayer, consistency of giving, consistency in all the areas of life where God has called us to obedience. But how can you nurture a focus on what is most important? And the third question is this: if you are complacent, will you answer Jesus' call again? Will you start over by answering the call, "Come, follow me"? There is no better time if you have gotten away from that calling. There's no better time than right now than to re-up, to sign up again, to show up, to get ready. And let's move forward together. Thank you again for joining us. I'll see you again next week.